For years, I thought I was making progress, but looking back now, I see that all I was actually doing was burning myself out. I'd spend an entire day cleaning or throw myself into one big project and then have absolutely no motivation to do anything for the next 2 or 3 weeks. I honestly just thought that's how it was until I realized it wasn't my motivation that needed to be changed, it was my mindset. My first project of the day, painting some trim on the porch. I've been putting this off for a very long time. For the longest time, I thought progress meant finishing everything at once. If I started cleaning the house, I wanted the entire house done before I sat down. If I started organizing something, I wanted every drawer finished before I quit. And if I started a home project, I wanted to cross the whole thing off my to-do list that very day. And if I couldn't finish it, sometimes I didn't even want to start. Looking back now, I think I spent years chasing the feeling of being finished instead of actually building a life I could sustain. But the truth is, I wasn't building habits. I was creating burnout. Every time I'd have a burst of motivation, I'd ride that wave as long as I possibly could. I'd clean for hours, skip breaks, and tell myself I'll just finish this one more thing. And then one more thing turned into 5 more things. And by the end of the day, I'd look around and think, wow, look how much I got done. And for that one day, it felt really, really rewarding. But then something else would happen, and the next morning I'd wake up completely exhausted. Not just physically, but also mentally. And the thought of cleaning another thing, that sounded miserable. So I tell myself I'd rest for the day, and then one day would become 3, and 3 days quickly would become a week. Eventually, the house slowly started to get messy again. And then I would feel overwhelmed all over again. And yet again, I'd spend another entire day trying to catch up. And before I even realized it, I had created this vicious cycle that I lived in for years. Go all in, burn yourself out, lose all motivation, get overwhelmed, and repeat. For the longest time, I blamed myself. I thought maybe I just wasn't disciplined enough, or maybe I just wasn't naturally organized, or I just wasn't cut out to be a homemaker. And I believed that for a really long time. There was a season in my life where I was genuinely embarrassed for people to come to my house. When Ethan and I lived in our first apartment, I wouldn't even let his family come inside. I'd come up with excuses. One time I remember telling them Ethan was asleep because he had work. Which technically he was, but that wasn't the whole truth. The bigger reason was because I was embarrassed. The house was so cluttered that I didn't want anybody to see it. And I remember thinking, one day I'll finally get everything together. And that's what I kept waiting for. One day, one magical day where I'd wake up motivated enough to fix everything all at once. But that day never came. Instead, the biggest changes in my life happened so quietly that I almost didn't notice them. Not because I worked harder or found the perfect planner, and not because I suddenly became more motivated. They happened because I slowly stopped asking myself, how do I finish everything today? And instead, I started asking, what's one thing I can do today? That question changed my life. It sounds almost too simple, but it completely changed the way I look at my home. Take today, for example. I'm painting the trim around the window and the door on our porch. That's it. The rest of the porch still needs painted, I know. And that's why I'm not taping everything off, because I know that I still have to finish this. So there's no sense in taping anything off. And there's plenty of other things I still want to do out here. But if I waited until I had the time, energy, and motivation to paint every single thing, this project might never get started. Years ago, that's exactly what I would have done. I would have looked at the entire porch and thought, if I can't finish all of this today, what's the point? Now I see one painted piece completely different because every brush stroke is one step closer than I was yesterday. And that's something I used to never celebrate. I used to only celebrate finished projects. Now I've learned to celebrate the progress because progress has a funny way of multiplying. One small project gives me the motivation to tackle another, and then another, and then another. Instead of draining me, it builds my momentum. And I think that's something I wish I would have understood years ago. Sometimes the fastest way to reach the finish line is to stop trying to sprint the whole race. Sometimes slowing down actually gets us there sooner. You know, that mindset has even changed the way I clean my kitchen. A few years ago, what I'm about to do would have looked completely pointless to me. But now, I think it's one of the biggest reasons my home has changed as much as it has. The other day, I thrifted a new pan. So I figured while I was putting it away, I'd take a few minutes to straighten up this cabinet. I don't really need to spend hours reorganizing my whole kitchen. I'm already there, so I might as well leave it a little better than I found it. That's become one of my favorite ways to make progress around the house. Not by setting aside entire days to clean, but by taking little opportunities whenever they naturally come up. In a few minutes, you're going to see my donation bin that I keep in my dining room. And lately, instead of taking a whole big day to declutter, just whenever I come across something I don't want anymore, I don't stop everything I'm doing and start a huge declutter project. I just simply put it in the basket, whether it's a pan or a decoration, or maybe something I've just held on to for a long time because I keep thinking maybe one day I'll use it. But this basket gives me time to think about it, time to decide if I really want to let this item go or not. And by the time the basket's full, I've already made all the decisions. Now all I have to do is donate it. And that has made decluttering lately feel so much less overwhelming. Simple as that. And as silly as the little basket might seem, it reminds me of something I've been learning over the last few years. Little things really do add up. Because if you would have walked into my house a few years ago, you would have seen a home that wasn't just a little cluttered. It was filthy. I'm talking embarrassing. There were times I genuinely didn't want anyone coming inside because I was so ashamed of how bad it had gotten. And the crazy part is, it wasn't because I was constantly working on huge projects. It was the complete opposite. I wasn't doing anything. I'd look around at everything that needed to be done, and it felt so overwhelming that sometimes I just wouldn't even start. And I told myself, I'll just get it tomorrow, or I'll have to wait and to do this when I have an entire day available. And that day rarely ever came. And while I waited, everything kept piling up. More dishes, more laundry, and more clutter. And that made a huge mess to the point where there were spots around our house that we really couldn't even walk through. And eventually it got so bad that I hit a breaking point. Then I'd spend an entire day trying to get the house back under control. Not because that was my normal routine, but because I'd let it get to the point where it felt like there wasn't any other choice. Then I'd promise myself, I'm never letting it get this bad again. Have you ever said that to yourself too? For a little while, I'd be okay. But because I hadn't changed my habits, the cycle always came right back. And honestly, I lived that way for years. I really believed I just wasn't a good homemaker. I thought maybe some women naturally knew how to keep a clean house, and I just wasn't one of them. Looking back now, I realize it was never about my ability. It was about my mindset. I thought progress had to be big to matter. I thought I had to clean the whole house. I had to wash the entire sink full of dishes. And if I was going to organize the kitchen, then I might as well just organize the whole entire thing. If I couldn't finish everything, then why even start? But over time, my mindset really shifted. Instead of asking, how do I fix my whole house? I started asking, what's one thing I can do today? Whether that's focus on just organizing one cabinet or just doing one load of laundry. Or my favorite, when I feel really overwhelmed and the dishes are piling up, I won't even wash the whole sink full of dishes. I'll just pick a select few and wash those and let those dry and come back and do a little bit later, and then a little later than that, and just keep going until my entire sink full of dishes is washed. One small habit at a time, and things really do pile up. And then tomorrow I do another one, and then another one the next day, and slowly those little things became my routine. And those routines completely changed my home. Now, I want to be honest, every room in my house has not become a part of my entire routine yet. There are still projects waiting. There are still areas I need to improve on. But most of my house is now part of that routine. And because of that, my home looks nothing like it used to. Not because I changed overnight, but because I stopped believing the lie that I had to do everything at one time. And I stopped waiting on one huge cleaning day to fix everything. I started letting ordinary days quietly change everything instead. Even washing dishes. Back then, I used to just let them pile and pile and pile until it was so overwhelming. And then I'd look at a sink full of dishes and say, this is going to take me 45 minutes to an hour to do. And I would be so frustrated about it. But now, if I'm overwhelmed looking at a sink full of dishes, which now they're usually kept up pretty good, unless I have a few days here and there where y'all have seen, or I've got some other things going on and I do get behind. But when that happens, if I look at my sink full of dishes and I feel overwhelmed, I just do a few then. I might do one side of the sink and leave the other side for later, or half of one side of sink, and I come back to the rest later, because it does not all have to be done at one time. And that's okay, because I can do this right now, and then a little bit later I can come back and I can take one more small step. And eventually those small steps add up over time, and they become routine. And that becomes a home that you're no longer ashamed of. This routine has probably become one of my favorites right now. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know we don't actually have a lawnmower right now. We're waiting to find out if we're going to be moving later on before we decide if we need to purchase a push mower or a riding mower. So for now, this little battery powered weed heater is pulling double duty. It has 2 batteries. Once both batteries die, that's it. I'm done for the day. And honestly, a few years ago, I would have absolutely hated this. I would have looked at this yard and thought, what in the world is the point? If I can't finish the whole thing, it would drive me bonkers. That used to be my mindset. If I couldn't finish it, I didn't see much value in starting it. Now, I almost look forward to it. I go outside, and it's just time to calm down and ease my mind. I cut one section of the yard, get a little exercise, and then I come back inside. It's simple, it's manageable, and because it's manageable, I actually keep doing it. I think that's something I completely misunderstood for years. I thought progress came from pushing myself as hard as I possibly could. Now I think progress actually comes from building a life I actually want to repeat tomorrow. Because if today's routine is so exhausting that I don't want to do it again, it probably isn't going to be sustainable. And if it isn't sustainable, it probably isn't going to be helping me as much as I think it is. Living here in Alabama, Especially this time of year, it gets hot and very humid. Like, walk outside and immediately start sweating, kind of hot. And it's not a dry hot, it's a wet, nasty, clammy hot. Years ago, I probably would have stayed outside trying to finish every inch of this yard anyway, and just keep telling myself to keep going. We're almost done. Just one little piece to go. You might as well finish it. And then I'd come inside completely drained, extremely ill, and the rest of the day would be shot because I'd have no energy left. No motivation, no desire to cook, no desire to clean, no desire to spend time doing anything else, and definitely no desire to be on my feet any longer. Now, when the batteries die, that's my reminder that I've done enough for today. Tomorrow is another opportunity to make progress. And I think that's been one of the healthiest changes I've made. Because somewhere along the way, I realized I don't have to earn my rest by completely exhausting myself first. I can simply stop because today's work is finished. Maybe not all the work, but today's work. And I think there's freedom in knowing the difference. I've started seeing this pattern in almost every area of my life, whether it's homemaking, projects, taking care of my health, growing this YouTube channel, or even in relationships. The things that have made the biggest difference weren't the things I did once. They were the things that I kept doing quietly, consistently, and over again. Nobody applauds you for mowing one section of the yard. Nobody notices the one little load of laundry, and nobody compliments one cabinet you organize. Those little things don't usually get attention. But those little things are what build a home. They're what build a healthy marriage. They're what build a business. They build trust, and they build character. And I think sometimes we overlook them because they don't feel exciting. We love the big before and after transformations. They're fun, satisfying, and inspiring. But real life usually doesn't change because of one big moment. It changes because of the 100 little ordinary ones. I think about my little YouTube channel sometimes. People see a video getting views, or they see that I finally reached monetization, or a brand that's reached out to me. And it's easy to think, wow, that happened fast, because I've only been back on YouTube for like 4 months. But it didn't. It happened one video at a time, one thumbnail at a time, one conversation at a time, and one person deciding to subscribe. And those little things didn't seem very significant in the moment, but over time they've started adding up into something I'm really proud of. And I think that's how God grows so many things in our lives. Not always through big, giant leaps, but through faithfulness in the ordinary, one step, then another, and another, until one day you look back and you realize you've come so much farther than you ever imagined. Maybe that's why I love little routines like this so much now, because every time I come out here, I'm reminding myself that I don't have to finish everything today. I just have to be faithful with what's in front of me. Tomorrow, there will be another section waiting for me, and that's okay. You know, the funny thing about not burning yourself out anymore is that you actually have something left to give at the end of the day. And I don't mean just energy for another chore. I mean energy for the people you love. Happy 4th of July, y'all. It will be the 6th before you guys see this, but we're headed out to the lake for fireworks. And we'll be back at the lake tomorrow for my dad's 50th birthday. Well, our 4th of July did not go exactly as planned. We got there, found a place to see it, and as we were walking to our seats, they shot off the very last firework. Apparently, they decided to start early this year, and we completely missed them. But that's okay, because we found a couple of friends from church, and we sat there and chatted for probably like 20-30 minutes while we were waiting on traffic to clear out. And it still got us out the house, at least for a few minutes, so that was okay. The next day, we celebrated my dad's 50th birthday, and seeing everybody together just had me thinking, one of the biggest changes I've noticed over the last few years isn't just how I take care of my home, it's how I have the energy to enjoy life outside of it. There was a time when I constantly felt overwhelmed, not because I was always cleaning, but because I wasn't. I look around at everything that needed to be done, and it felt so overwhelming that I didn't even know where to begin. The mess would keep growing. I'd get more embarrassed, more discouraged, and then eventually I'd reach my breaking point, and I'd spend an entire day trying to fix everything all at once. And by the end of it, I'd be completely exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And when you live in that cycle long enough, it starts affecting so much more than just your home. Even when you're with the people you love, part of your mind is still back home thinking about everything you haven't done. You're carrying that weight around with you all the time. And I don't think I realized how heavy it had become until it wasn't there anymore. Learning that one small step really does matter has changed so much more than my cleaning routine. It's given me margin because I'm not constantly waiting until everything falls apart before I do something about it. I'm taking little steps along the way, and those little steps have given me so much more freedom to simply enjoy moments like these. Because the dishes will still be there tomorrow. The next project will still be waiting, but birthdays, you only get one 50th birthday. Those moments matter. Those are the memories I'll remember years from now, not whether every cabinet in my house was perfectly organized. Speaking of birthdays, I love reading all your comments on my community post where I asked y'all who y'all thought I looked like the most, my mom or my dad. When I was younger, everyone always told me I looked just like my dad. And honestly, I still think I favor him quite a lot. And I've gotten quite a few questions lately as to whether I self-tan. No, I do not self-tan. Matter of fact, the only time I'm really out in the sun is when I'm weed eating the yard. And that's just been here within the last couple months that we have had this going on. So hopefully seeing my dad answers your question. No, the tan I have is natural. But the older I've gotten, the more people tell me I look more like my mom. You know, I think one of the biggest reasons we miss the progress we've made is because we're looking for some big dramatic change. We want to wake up one day and suddenly have it all together. We want one really productive weekend to fix everything, one big makeover, or one giant breakthrough. But when I look back over the last few years, that's not how my life changed. It wasn't one productive Saturday or just one specific cleaning schedule. And it wasn't just one home project that we did. It was thousands of little decisions that didn't seem very important at the time. The sink full of dishes, the basket of laundry, mowing one section of the yard, or just one can of paint, or just decluttering one or two items. None of these things felt like life-changing when I was doing them, but together they slowly changed my home. And somewhere along the way, they changed me too. Sometimes I still catch myself looking around and thinking I haven't done enough. Then I remember where I started. There was a time I didn't want people walking through my front door because I was so embarrassed. And I believed I just wasn't naturally a good homemaker. Now, my house is still far from perfect. There's still plenty of projects waiting for us to do and plenty of rooms waiting for us to improve. And some weeks, I still get behind. Some weeks, life just interrupts my plans. You know, like last week when I wasn't feeling good and I had to go to the urgent care clinic. Y'all seen that too. But what feels messy to me today would have felt peaceful to the version of me from a few years ago. And I think that's such a beautiful reminder that progress is often happening long before we recognize it. You know, as I've been thinking about all of this lately, I really feel like the Lord has been teaching me something that goes so much deeper than homemaking. I think so many of us, even as Christians, can start measuring our worth by our productivity. If we had a productive day, we feel accomplished. If we checked everything off our list, then we feel like we're doing well. But when we don't, when we get sick, when life interrupts our plans, when we don't accomplish nearly as much as we hoped, it's so easy to start believing we've somehow fallen behind, not just in our homes, but in who we are. The beautiful thing about the gospel is that Jesus never asked us to find our identity in what we've accomplished. He invites us to find our rest in Him, not in our finished to-do list, but in His finished work on the cross. That's something I really needed to remember, because if I'm not careful, I start trying to earn a feeling that Jesus has already freely given me: peace, acceptance, and rest. The more I walk with the Lord, the more I realize the Christian life isn't about trying harder to become a better person. It's about abiding in Christ. When we stay close to Him, the fruit of the Spirit begins to grow naturally. Not because we're striving to manufacture it ourselves, not because we've somehow become good enough, but because He's changing us from the inside out. I think that's why this lesson about small steps has meant so much to me. Yes, I've seen it transform my home, but more importantly, I've seen it transform my heart. Real growth is usually quiet. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens one faithful day at a time, one choice at a time, and one step at a time. Until one day, you look back and realize you're not the person you used to be. Not because you've changed yourself overnight, but because God has been faithfully working in your life all along. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from today's video, it's not that you need to do more. It's actually the opposite. I hope you know your value has never been determined by how much you accomplish in a day. It never has been, and it never will be. Your worth was settled at the cross. Everything else, the clean house, the finished DIY projects, the simple routines, those are simply opportunities to faithfully steward what God has already entrusted in us. They're not a measure of our value. So, thank y'all so much for spending a little part of your day with me, and I truly hope this encouraged you. I'd love to know down in the comments what's one small step you've taken recently that you're proud of. No matter how small you may think it is, I'd love for us to celebrate together. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye, friends.